pumpkins, little yellow scallops, some little bitty okra. Good morning, sirs. How are you? Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. So last garden tour I promised you that we would start in this bed that we did not look at last week. So they say that you should plant your garden as close to your house as possible, and that is true. So I do have the perennial garden that is close to our house. We will absolutely go over there today, and that does get tended to way more frequently than the garden that's right here. This is our lane. It is in progress. It looks like a lane full of grass, and that's because it is, but eventually this is going to be the closest garden to our house because our house is going to be built back there. Now it is at least 5 years away from breaking ground probably, but when our house is that close, this area will be better maintained because I'll have to look at it every day. As it is, it's kind of the farthest part in my backyard, but these melons that I planted in here a couple weeks ago were pretty darn yellow. They were suffering pretty badly just from not being able to access nutrition. You can tell they're doing a lot better now. It actually took me about another week to put some granulated fertilizer at the base, but we don't really have any more yellowing. Now all they need to do is grow. This little guy, we'll see if he makes it. One of the issues that I've had personally is during this transition of this space into a raised bed space, I drew back the drip irrigation that I had here, and so I have to come out and hand water that, and it takes some brain power to remember to do that, but I've been remembering enough to keep them alive, so there's that. We had several days this week with well over 100-degree temps, so I didn't come out and mow, but that doesn't matter, at least not right now. Lots of things happening down on this end. This volunteer birdhouse guard starts in the grass over there, and we've encouraged it to grow up the trellis. And I'm trying to encourage it mostly this way because there's nothing over there. On this side, I have our chicken and dumplings cowpeas, and I really don't want it trying to overtake because it will. I love the feel of this plant. The entire thing is just silky and velvety. The leaves and the stem, the small little fruits. So this is a baby birdhouse gourd. This one is pollinated. I think this is the first one that we've seen actually develop at all this year. There's actually quite a few. There's one here and here. There's one there. Birdhouse gourd is edible, and it actually tastes really good. Now you could eat it at really any small size. Before it gets to about 6 inches maybe, it's nice and tender. It tastes a lot like a cucumber. I'm gonna have to taste it again. We'll do that in the next garden tour because I'm trying to remember exactly what was different, but there was something different about it. I will let some of these develop into birdhouse gourds, but there'll be so many that we can eat some of them small. My chicken and dumplings cowpeas, as cowpeas do, they take a little while to get going, and then once they get going, they really get going. So they've more than reached the top of the trellis. They have in fact surpassed the top of the trellis, and they're trying to grow all along each other. This is fine. I don't have any more vertical trellis to give them. They're just going to grow along each other, and then eventually with the weight of the peas, they'll flop down. So this will be a glorious mess. Kind of already is, but a productive one, so I'll take it. Look how lovely these are. So we are gonna wait for these to turn brown and crispy before harvest a lot of times. So you'll see that this little sticky outy part here, that's an official term, it has a couple peas hanging down. This will, at the end of this will form more flowers and more peas as the season progresses. This one might be a little bit easier to see, but can you see that development there? So there'll be more to come. These guys essentially produce all season long, and it's really nice. I do have my harvest basket. It's a little bit smaller than the basket that I'm used to carrying around, and that's because this year my harvests are a little bit smaller. So just like they say at the dinner table, if you have a small plate and you fill it up, you can trick yourself into thinking that you're eating a lot of food. That's what this is. Down here I have a volunteer cucumber that is sandpapery in texture. It's really not, you know, the best cucumber that there ever was, but it was free food and it's not too bad tasting. There are probably, goodness, there's probably several of these cucumbers on here to help fill our basket. It's funny, it looks like we have a cowpea that's reached all the way to the end of the trellis. So it's coming from like over here, and it's grown up and around this volunteer cucumber. These also have a fuzzy leaf, but it's nothing like the velvety texture of that birdhouse gourd. This is much more scratchy. Behind the grass over here, there's actually two 15-gallon grow bags. And in each grow bag, I put 1 2 cubic foot bag of soil with a little bit of fertilizer. And we have these melons growing. These are my armpit melons. There are several armpit melons growing on here now. We do have some disease. It's been a very wet year here, and so this is just to be expected. This doesn't worry me. It will mean that we will have less time to enjoy this plant and its fruit, but that's okay. Some years are like that. I was watching this one down here. I guess that's probably okay. I don't really know what that, I thought it was mold, but I guess it's not. Maybe I'll try to hang this up here so we don't lose track of it. This is the melon that came on first, and it's probably going to be the one that ripens first, so I'm watching it. If you're here and you're new and you've never heard of an armpit melon, you're trying to find it online, you're not gonna find it online as far as I know. I don't think anybody else has named a melon armpit melon. It's a cross that was accidentally developed here that I'm trying to stabilize, and the seed coming out of this is F3 seed, and we need something like 7 or 8 generations for it to breed true and be stable. So far so good. We've gotten basically the same fruit every year that I've planted it, so we'll see what happens this year. It looks right now. Oh hey, we've got a miniature white cucumber to harvest. Greenhouse is a little sad looking. The greenhouse thinks that it is the beginning of October, but it's not. We've had quite the year with pests and disease inside the greenhouse. I did purchase some green lacewing larvae and adults, and I did sprinkle them over here, but things are just not looking good. This will probably have to come out soon. I need to do something probably more intense about this problem. These miniature white cucumbers, this is their mature size, so we're still getting a tiny bit out of here, but the fact that these plants are just the perfect home for these aphids, I don't really want to perpetuate this, so I'll probably sacrifice these guys in the name of getting rid of these. It has been a battle. The reason that I went with green lacewing instead of something like ladybug is apparently ladybugs have been over harvested and their populations are on the decline, and I don't really want to contribute to that. I know the season it's winding down. It's not super close to done, but in an environment like a greenhouse, pests like that can persist, and I'm really trying not to let the bugs also take my fall and winter garden. I've been coming through here pretty regularly to harvest the tomatillos because I'm trying to collect enough to make like a dedicated tomatillo salsa. I think I've got enough right now. They are kind of winding down. We do have some new flowers though, so there'll be more to come. Look at them. Speaking of flowers, look at these. This is the Malabar spinach, and this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever grown. Definitely growing this every year. Oh, it's so pretty. It's a little bit dark in here, isn't it? So this is normally when I come out to do my garden tours, but of course the days are getting shorter and we are overcast today. But today the high is 83. I think right now it's 73 outside. So much cooler than it's been. So I do have a few ripe tomatoes to harvest. This one is chicken food. This guy's started to blush, so we'll take him before he cracks. This particular Roma tomato looks pretty sad from this side. There's a lot of disease and things that I've just let go because they look gross, but on this side, it actually looks pretty all right. It's nice and full. The leaves look nice and green. We have some new blooms, so I'm just leaving it. Look, there's all this fruit on here. This particular plant was one that I had a lot of problems with blossom end rot earlier in the year, and I didn't do anything for it. I just assumed that the soil that I put in here, it was taking a while to really release nutrients because it wasn't fully broken down, and it's probably accurate because I don't see any blossom end rot over here, which that's a really good sign for these beds. As you can see, I have pulled back the mulch and re-amended at the edge of some of the beds. I didn't bring the seeds out with me today, but in this particular bed, I plan to plant some yellow wax beans right here. There's actually a tomato right here. It's heavily defoliated on the bottom. You can see it's got foliage and flowers and things up there. And then we have this one too, same situation, but the beans should be able to grow here amongst the tomatoes and do really well. Over here we have our container peach trees. Oh look, there's a volunteer tomato growing back here. As happens, I'll probably have to take that out so it doesn't overtake these trees, but I've been watching the peaches. They are changing color. They don't look so green anymore, but they're still kind of hard. These ones look a little more green down here. And there's wasps somewhere, so I get scared about rifling around here too much because the wasps always come out. I don't know where they are. Looks like my strawberries, which have not fruited in a while, they probably need some nutrition, but this is probably part of the problem. They've been forming tons and tons of runners, and I just haven't been keeping up on cutting them back. Actually, most of the plants that you see here are actually transplanted out of the weed fabric from the strawberries that did this last year. So back here on the back side of the trellis, you can see that I have re-amended here, and this is what I have re-amended with. So this is what I filled the beds with this year, along with some of our manure and some hay. This Kellogg's raised bed and potting mix. I have found that this is lacking, like I mentioned with this tomato here. So what I've done is I could use some more manure, but I actually need the manure because I have some more beds that I'm gonna fill. So I did purchase in some mushroom compost. I've used this a little bit in the raised bed garden. Not this one, but I've got another one next to my house, and it's done really well in there. So I bought more of this. This was only $5 a bag, very heavy. 18.14 kilograms, yeah, 40 pounds. And I really like it. So I've covered it now, so I can't really show you. I put this down first and then I put the Kellogg's on top of it. But it's nice. It's almost got a sandy texture, which I think is going to help these beds because I feel like they need some drainage. So not only will it feed the bed, it's gonna help with drainage. So I like that. So that's what I've done all along here. It's the mushroom compost first, about 2 to 3 inches, and then some of the Kellogg's potting mix on top. And right here I'm going to put lots of peas. It might be a little early to put like a shelling pea in here. I have grown peas that I planted in July. I've grown them over the summer. They just tend to not do as well in the heat, so I'll have to kind of look at the long forecast and see what I think. The greenhouse is staying a lot cooler than it had been, given that I have new fans in here this year. I know you can hear them, and the shade cloth, and then the shade from the tomatoes here, so I might be able to get away with it. We can experiment. Again, I didn't bring those seeds out. I intended to, but that's okay. I can do that off camera. So these little tiny Dr. Witchies, these are supposed to get bigger. My plants are just stressed. That's gross. I buried my tag, but I don't know what tomato this is. This might be another Dr. Witchies. We've got quite a few large green fruits up here. So there's still a lot coming out of the greenhouse, even though it's been kind of crazy. Do you see what I see? The mammoth sunflowers that I planted in here have flowered. This poor guy wanted to be 10 feet tall, could only be 9 feet tall. There's that other one from this side. That means the ones that are in the pumpkin patch should be flowering soon, and those guys don't have a roof over them. Here's those tomatoes from this side. See, even with everything going on in the greenhouse, it was worth not pulling these tomatoes out. These ones are supposedly the black crim tomato. I don't really think so. I think this seed was mislabeled, or I screwed up the seedlings. If this isn't black crim according to my seedlings, I don't know what it's supposed to be. It's good though. Oh, look at our little basket filling up. I might actually regret not bringing the big one. That would be a happy regret, wouldn't it? That one's okay. This one, I thought it had a giant crack that was growing stuff. It still has a little bit of funny things right here that I can probably cut that out, but this one has some cat facing on the bottom. It's a funny looking tomato. The cherry tomato plants are not producing as well as I had hoped. I'm gonna guess that it is because we've had high temperatures and the blossoms are falling off. You can see here we have this stem where there were lots of blossoms, but they fell. There's this one little tomato on the end of all that. It is still trying, so we'll see. Like I said, this week the temperatures were in the hundreds, and as far as I can tell, for the remainder of August, we should have high 80s, low 90s, and with the shade cloth and the fans, we should do okay in here. The plants are still trying, that's for sure, and I can leave them. I've got time and space to leave them. We haven't talked about the green stalks in a couple tours, and so this is what this one looks like. I've got dead Peruviana zinnia at the top here. I have been leaving these because I plan to collect the seed. I just haven't yet. I've shown how to collect the seed on like your standard zinnia in previous tours. These are a little bit different because of the way that their petals are. Do you see this? That's a baby armyworm. I have decided that I don't necessarily like spinosad as a method of control for worms. I need to just go back to what I know, which is BT. BT works really well. Anyway, so if I pull down these dead petals here on this little Peruviana zinnia, we're gonna have a lot of seeds inside. Can you see that? Right there. This whole center is all seeds. We're going to be having some volunteer Peruvianas in the bed in front of me. But it looks like just little papery nothings, but that's what the seed is. Cool, huh? So I plan to harvest some of that. Haven't yet. The little cherry tomatoes are doing okay over here. I think I'll probably leave those today and not get kind of nitpicky with that. But we had some beans that I started in here. These guys are starting to get to harvestable size, which is nice. I had some leftover standard sized tomatoes and peppers that I just threw in here just because, rather than waste them. I just wanted to see what they would do. So the pepper is actually over here. See that? It's got actually a little pepper on it. And then I stuck in some chard. This is still my celery, which is kind of stunted. I need to do more feeding in here. But you know, all things considered, it's really not doing half bad. These Chinese eggplants are doing so awesome. Look at that. Over next to that Chinese eggplant, I have this one that I've only labeled round eggplant. This is about the size that I've been harvesting it. Over here is a black beauty that has been flowering all season long, but not really setting fruit. I don't know what's up with that. As far as the eggplants go, I have the same things planted across the street. So this here is a black beauty eggplant that is putting on fruit. They're so pretty. Those ones I know get bigger, but this little guy. Look at how pretty that is. So much color. The pepper and string trellis experiment is growing well. I guess it is. It's growing really well. It's also going really well. Now, I have decided that this is not my favorite way to grow peppers. I think this is a really neat way to grow peppers. It's a neat way to grow them in a space where maybe you couldn't afford to have a big bushy plant and you still would get some fruit where maybe otherwise you wouldn't. But if you've got this space, you do get more fruit out of letting them bush out. I'm having issues where I have several different jalapeno plants and I seem to not have enough jalapenos. Even though I don't have a ton of tomatoes to make tomato salsa, I still don't really have enough peppers, and my peppers haven't really had problems at all this year. I think it's just because of the way that I've pruned them to grow. I have started to let a lot of these suckers grow to try and get a few more peppers before the season is done. This particular space I don't actually need for my fall and winter garden. This is a mess right here. I'm ignoring it for right now because this is where we're gonna put actually 4 raised beds right here that are 3 feet by 6 feet each. And this is actually in the walkway. So I can still set up for the fall and winter garden and let these guys live for as long as they can before the frost gets in here in the greenhouse. Over on this side, you can kind of get a visual of what I'm going for on the other side. We've got this bed here, that one which I am growing in, and then there's space for 2 more just like it on the other end. I have some tomatoes on a similar trellis down here. These guys have also not been able to set any fruit, likely because of the heat. These are Belgian Giants. They're an heirloom slicer. They're my favorite tomato, so I'm really hoping that we get to see some fruit coming out of them this year. They've been trying to set fruit. The blossoms just keep falling off. See, we've got some more blossoms here. I'm not touching them. I know what happened last week. I've got some puny little peppers down here that I've been laughing at the whole season because they've been tiny. These are shishitos down in this little corner. They have been pushing out a ton of blossoms, and I noticed that I have a little shishito pepper down here. I got worried that I wasn't going to be able to have any of those this year, but it looks like we will, even though the plants are tiny. And of course, we can't leave the greenhouse without talking about this. This is my volunteer birdhouse gourd. There's at least one here. It has taken over my planting table. There are plenty of things under there. It's gone all the way across and down. So far, I don't think this particular plant has put on any little baby birdhouse gourds. Not that I can see, and I think the reason for that is the fact that it is growing inside the greenhouse. They bloom at night and attract a moth, and I don't think, at least this particular moth hasn't been able to navigate in here super well in order to pollinate these guys. Obviously, I can't let this go on forever, but I'm gonna let it for now because I like it. I think it's pretty. Look at our full harvest basket. Oh, it's so pretty. So our goal is to get over to the pumpkin patch. I'd like to go in the back gate, but I have to pass my honeybees. Honeybees, when it's kind of cloudy, yucky weather, they get a little bit agitated. We'll see, it's still pretty early in the morning, so they might not be out too much. We're gonna walk fast. My bees really have been gentle, but you know, you try not to mess with them during times when you know that they are naturally kind of irritated. Here's the back gate to the pumpkin patch. I thought this might be easier to get into, but I might be wrong. Oh no, we can get in. So this is a different view than we're used to seeing when we come in. Mammoth sunflowers reaching for the sky. I don't see any flowers on those mammoth sunflowers yet. Check out the pumpkins. Now I haven't mowed in here in probably a month. It seems like the pumpkin vines are doing okay, kind of skipping along the top of the grass and like weighing it down. See, the grass is kind of growing in amongst it, but it doesn't seem to be hurting anything. This is huge. I don't know why I didn't expect it to reach out this far. Now I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's right here. I have a volunteer, what I think is a white zucchini, and I wanted to make sure that I picked off of it today. It's a good thing these fruits are white, because if they were green, I would probably never be able to see them. I'm also trying to see if I can see if any of the pumpkins have started to turn. They're definitely still flowering. That's a female flower. See the, oh, that looks kind of oblong. That's interesting. That there was a little squash bee. One of our members had asked me if those little wild squash bees, those native pollinators, if they sting. I've never been stung by one of those guys. Honeybees will sting if you're messing with their hive or you're kind of too close to their hive, especially during the wrong time of day or during the wrong type of weather. But they can also sting if they feel threatened, like if you kick the flower that they're on, they can sting then too. I've also been stung by sweat bees and wasps. I know you can only hear the neighbor's dog barking, but there's a very low, consistent hum in here of all those squash bees. Absolutely loving life in this pumpkin patch. Here is our growth stake for the week. This always amazes me. I actually have not been out to the pumpkin patch since we were here last week, so I haven't even gotten a chance to peek this. We have not gotten any rain since we came out here last week, and I have not watered out here. It seems like this particular plant, in the very least, likes to grow about 6 feet every week, which is almost a foot a day, which boggles my mind. At this point, I'm really glad that I gave the pumpkins this much space, because it would be sad to kind of have to cut them back depending on where they were growing. Yep, there's more there. So at this moment, I don't think I can really get back there without potentially stepping on the vine and harming it, and I don't want to do that just because I'm curious about the pumpkins. I will get to see them eventually. There's a bunch in there, and they're big. And I had noticed a few different squash bugs. I have not noticed evidence of squash vine borers, but it seems like the plants are doing really well despite a little bit of bug pressure. You can kind of tell where things are starting to yellow back there. That's where I noticed the squash bugs. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. You can see some dead and dying leaves, but there's also some really healthy ones. So I feel pretty confident that these plants are going to be okay. There's a little bit of disease and bug pressure, but they seem pretty resilient. And what is very interesting to me, that it just now occurred to me, is that the yellow, there's like a yellow band in the middle of this pumpkin patch. That is where the weed fabric is underneath. You can see the pumpkins have grown out this way and they're nice and green. And they've grown out that way and they're nice and green. They're only yellow where the weed fabric is. Oh, I don't know. Should I show it to you? Do I want to ruin your day? I will give you a nasty bug warning. There's a gross bug. Look at that. Oh, it's so gross. And there's a bigger one down here. There's another one higher up. Oh, there's actually a lot of them on that sunflower. I can handle bugs. Those guys, I don't know what they are. It's like squash bugs on steroids. I hate them. So we're getting out of here. What I was gonna say though is, in my first garden, I had down some weed fabric, and I noticed that the weed fabric was a really great home for things like squash bugs. They would just hide underneath the weed fabric. When you pull that back, there'd be tons of them. And so maybe that's what's going on here. There's a great home for the squash bugs here, so they're able to kind of take over right there. Whereas in the grass, there's a whole bunch of predator insects and things, and maybe fewer places to hide. So maybe they're less of an issue there. Very interesting, just a theory. Really quick, anybody who knows about wild plants, is this milkweed? Because I hope it is, there's lots of it. If it's milkweed, I'm gonna have Levi not mow it. You've got tomatoes?
Yeah.
Which one's your favorite? Yeah, the Berry's Crazy Cherry. Your Berry's Crazy Cherry is doing a lot better than mine. I didn't even show it on my garden tour today. What color are the caterpillars?
They're like brown and...
Yeah, those are the caterpillars I'm seeing too. We'll spray this with BT later, because this would be a shame to lose to caterpillars. Her Berry's Crazy Cherry is doing what I expected a Berry's Crazy Cherry to do.
There's
That's
another smashed
actually
one.
funny.
There's a smashed one in the other way.
Oh my goodness. Are you guys sick of cucumbers yet?
No.
No? Very good. Have you guys been preferring cucumbers and tomatoes to apples and bananas in the morning?
Yes.
Yeah, that's been evident in the fruit bowl inside. Someone's child is screaming. Winnie, come here, say hi. Are you yelling, Winnie? I guess she's gonna scream from afar. Clover's gonna come say hi to us. Oh, here we go. Hey girls. We haven't had a goat intermission in the garden tour in a while. Are you gonna help us out with that, Miss Tori? Gorgeous. You are, you're gorgeous. She's one of the few blue-eyed goats that I have left. Got just a few. I keep La Manchas and Nigerian dwarves and I breed the two together to get mini La Manchas. It's super uncommon to see blue eyes outside of Nigerian dwarves. The only reason you see it on Tori here, who's a mini La Mancha, is because her dad, who's a Nigerian dwarf, he had blue eyes. And they're just so pretty. But this is a garden tour, not a goat tour, so we'll be on our way, huh? We still have to go to the raised bed garden. Are you coming to the garden with me? Yes, it's your garden. We gotta go to your garden. See, I've assembled one of the 3x6 beds to go in the greenhouse. And we've got another load of soil, plus this is the mushroom compost, plus manure from our animals, plus hay. Last week I showed you how the wind blew over some of our sunflowers. We actually got another storm, so I guess it maybe has rained since then. It was at least very windy another day. And so we had another one blow that way, which is unfortunate, but I haven't pulled them out because they're not actually dead. They're alive, and the pollinators have been all over them. So this is how they are, but they're still benefiting. The ones that are standing, I think they're only standing because the loofah gourd has tethered them. You can see that here. So it works out. The loofah tunnel is the proper, shady, lovely green oasis that I imagined and dreamed that it would be. My husband came through here and weed whacked. He probably didn't need to because there's not enough sun really hitting the ground to let it grow too much, but he said, I only hit my head twice. Maybe on this one. That one's pretty big. Or maybe it was this one. This is the first one that I had seen drop down. They really haven't gained much as far as size, but they're developing that lovely fibrous interior. I actually had quite a few loofah that I harvested green last year simply because of timing. The loofah got a late start because I had a birdhouse gourd on this trellis along with a loofah last year, and the birdhouse gourd really took over, and by the time the birdhouse gourd died back and the loofah was able to bloom, it was a lot later in the year. I think we were getting blooms in August, and so we had a lot of these at the end of the year when the frost was coming on. And believe it or not, you can harvest green loofah, and you can do it pretty easily. I have a video on that. I'll link it in the description box. So if you live in a short season area and you don't think you can grow loofah, if you can get them to about this, you can do it. One thing I am noticing with some of the younger loofah is that they are starting to curve. I think that this is probably a pollination issue. This happens with things like cucumbers. There have been quite a few bees, like the bees and actually the hummingbirds have really been enjoying the loofah gourd, but one of the issues is the heat. The heat of the day can actually sterilize pollen, so it's just less fertile when it's super hot out, but we're getting cooler, so it'll be all right. This is what the loofah tunnel looks like from the outside. It's definitely prettiest at this time in the morning. Absolutely gorgeous. There is a tomato down here that I put in. This looks like it might be a Berry's Crazy Cherry. It's getting engulfed. Probably won't get much off of that. I think it's safe to say the green beans are done. What do you guys say? These guys have been here a long time. They've given it their all. And I think it's time to chop and drop. So what I'm gonna do with these guys, I don't wanna pull them out of the ground. On legumes, there are little nitrogen nodules on the roots that if you pull them out and then discard them, you lose that for your soil. So it's best to chop the plants off at the soil level, put the leaves down in the bed to help increase the organic matter in the bed, and then leave the roots in there so that the nitrogen can stay in the bed. So I'm going to be chopping and dropping this off camera at some point this week. There's probably still a small harvest to be had, so I'll be sure to get that too. Like that one's really big. So like I said, my husband came through and weed whacked some. I did ask him not to mow down any volunteers, so he kind of avoided the center of the garden, which I'm not mad about. So on these stakes, I have 2 scallop squash. This is my first time trying to grow a bush style squash vertically. It's going really well so far. You can see down here the different ties that I've made, and it's probably time, yeah. The end of the squash is way up here. So I probably need to put a tie maybe right there to help tie it in. This one is a white scallop squash. You can see how there's a lot of really nice airflow. If I felt like it needed more, I could take out some of these leaves, but I'm not seeing any signs that this needs more airflow, so I'm gonna leave it for now. You can probably see we've got some flowers and some squash bees doing their thing. I love to see it. This down here is a male flower. See that? There's no baby squash at the base of the flower. And then this one actually does have, this is a little yellow scallop squash at the base. And the bees are loving it. They're doing their thing. So I don't think we're gonna have any issues with that particular one being pollinated. So far, the white scallop squash only has this one male flower. I can see an immature bud back there. Next week, we should be able to harvest from these plants, which is awesome. Next door, this is a Ginger's Pride melon. This has grown a lot in a week. This is actually one of the plants that I put that mushroom compost on. I've grown a lot of things in this bed over the years, and what I recently pulled out of here was elephant garlic. I think maybe it was corn last year, and I've amended some with some granular fertilizers and things, but this mushroom compost is really impressing me. So the hope with growing these guys vertically is eventually I'll be able to cut off some of the lower foliage and give this melon some room to ramble. It looks like it's already trying. Yeah, it's way back there. We've even got a few little flowers on here. These looks like male flowers, which usually that's what you'll see pop up first. These okra also benefited from some of that mushroom compost. Hello, sir. And we do have some little bitty okra. See that? This is the Okinawa pink okra. I haven't noticed the flowers, but I did notice the dead bud on this one. And that's an okra. You managed to not kill the plants by laying on them. You can kind of see the two different varieties based on the leaves. Okinawa pink, and then this one is Alabama red. See how it looks just a little bit different in the leaf shape? The Alabama red looks like it has not put on any blossoms yet. These guys will also grow tall and give some room for the melon to come over here. So there was a little bit of planning going into this. So over here near Jack Jack, we start to get into the wildness. This is where my husband was like, you know what, I'm not going in there. There's a lot going on. It's actually probably coming time where I really need to be paying attention for ripe fruit. Yeah, see down here. So we can start to partake from these volunteer plants. I'll probably have to step on some of them to really get in there at some point. But see, lots of fruit to be had. These tomatoes are delicious. We've got our grapes on the trellis right here. They seem to be okay despite this chaos. They've got their leaves facing the sun, and they've got a decent amount of airflow up there, so I'm not too worried about them. Back there is my wild asparagus patch. Cultivated asparagus. It's not like a wild breed, but it's wild and crazy. I did manage to weed in the strawberry bed this last week because I'm bound and determined not to let the grass take this over this year. And I also did get back here and freed up the blueberries from all of their weeds. So they actually had a lot of settling down in the bed, so I had to put in some more soil. Hopefully this isn't evidence of a cat. It might be. But yeah, these guys look way better than they did. My alyssum that I had used for a ground cover worked for a long time, and then it just died and things went crazy from there. I'd really like to check out these tomatoes because these are probably not yellow currant tomatoes. The yellow currant tomatoes are the volunteer that I see most often, but these are not those. These have purpling on their stem, and I have not seen any ripe fruit yet. These came up later than those other tomatoes. This one looks like a slicer. Oh yeah, okay. I saw this and then wondered, but I think this belongs to the plant over here. This, I believe, is a slicer tomato, so a big one. This is not the most ideal situation for tomatoes to grow in. This could promote disease in the long term, but so far so good. I don't see any disease issues in here, but don't worry, it'll come. These are a different type of grape right here, and they have reached the top of the trellis. I have pinched off this particular plant so that it can put out some more side shoots, which it's doing nicely. So these guys are gonna take over. The one over here, I did something a little bit different where I just kind of took the main stem and wove it in this way. That's probably the wrong way to do things, but I figure we could experiment. There's actually, this looks like it's the big tomato too, over here. It's exciting. It's a mess, but I love it. Huh, baby? You're so wee. So that's my garden this week, you guys. It's wild and crazy, but it's the time of year for that. I'll get some seeds poked in the ground in the greenhouse, and hopefully they'll be germinated by next week. I'll see you guys again soon.